See it played, Drive on Frankfurt, NATO-Soviet Future Warfare in West Germany. It was also the magazine game in Counterattack issue number 1. So at this point I can definitely talk about the game. I've sampled just barely enough to see. I think I see what gamers are talking about who have actually played the game, and what they find. I think a huge success certainly for a magazine game. Graphics, clearly a disastrous snafu, but that aside. So this is a alternating impulse game. Now it's not random. It always starts with the Soviets first, then the NATO, and then back and forth. But the alternating impulse, especially for such an early design, just really keeps it interesting. And on top of that, it's not just formation activation. There's formation activation or there's a general activation. Basically, for such a small format magazine game, the reason why I think it's such a big success is that you have quite a bit of decision making going on. So you're gonna, obviously there's the pass, but the pass aside, you're going to decide it's a formation activation or impulse. Formation impulse, or what do they actually call it? Formation activation or a general activation. Then let's talk about combat, because I finally had my straight up standard ground combat. So I'm looking from the NATO perspective. So I'm looking east. Yeah, that's interesting. Near the Fulda area, I had my first solid ground contact. But this is what's terribly, terribly interesting is that the 3 different levels of combat. So they are hasty, deliberate, and assault. And these really make a difference. These make a difference as to how much support you can bring to bear, and how much you're going to pay in movement points. Add to that the very interesting twist that your advance after combat is basically the remainder of your movement allowance. Makes it interesting. Then probably the crowning feature of the game is this right here. So the Soviet division there, which you can tell that they're already activated because they're flipped to their backside, and only their defensive value. So the 8, 8, and 5, and the parenthesized. Oh, that's off the screen. But these defensive values are showing very clear and nice little touch, actually, that it reminds you that they're done because they're not attacking and they're not moving. But they attacked through the center here, and they attacked this West German mechanized infantry here, and here. So as a result of the combat, the defender there took a step loss. Now, there's a small table, easy to memorize. You know, Soviet regiments are 3 steps. Little air mobile battalions are 1 step. Most everything else is in between at 2 steps. It's really not hard to remember. Actually, you could figure out on your own that this West German Mechanized Infantry Battalion here is 2 steps. So when it took a step loss, that leaves 1 step. And that's what this marker right here is. Now, I'll just pick them up. So off to the side of the map, I have face down, I have all of the West German, I guess, strength markers. I don't remember what they're called in particular, but these are the strength markers. You have two-step strength markers, and you have a bunch of 1-step strength markers. So because the 2-step West German Mechanized Infantry Battalion took 1-step loss, that leaves it with one step. So I drew face down. These are all face down like that. I drew randomly one of the 1-step strength markers, and I put it underneath the unit there without looking at it. Now, what's really interesting, so I'll show. So not only does the opponent not know the current strength of the unit, but even the owning player doesn't know. The next time that strength marker will be flipped over will be during combat, which is very interesting. So let me use another example. Let's take this. So let's say that the unit that took the loss was this Mechanized Infantry Battalion. I randomly draw a 1-step strength marker and put it underneath the unit, and it stays together now, like that. And the 1 is the remaining steps of the unit. When this unit then goes into combat again, in combat, you're going to flip it over. Okay. So in combat, you're going to flip it over, and then you're going to figure out what its actual strength is. Right there. You have an armor values if the unit were armor. And then you have mechanized values if the unit's mechanized, which is the case here. So in combat, not only you as the owning player, but the opponent's going to learn that this unit's current strength is actually 2-2. And let's take an entirely different 1 strength marker. There's 2-3. So just a random spread of strength values. Great little mechanic. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a better way to do it, but in a magazine format limited to, again, I assume it was a 200 counter mix. Very fascinating, very interesting. Really like that. Again, for such a small, not such a small, but for this 1 map format, again, 200 counter format, that adds a lot of interest and variability. So that's just really good. So I think those are really the main features that make the game very interesting and so far very fun to play. So we'll take a panoramic look at the area of operations for the NATO player. We still have this West German division here. Right there, we have another West German formation here and a 3rd West German formation here. Included, we have some higher assets like this electronic warfare unit, and there's a helicopter base there, and then over here we've got this is Frankfurt here. Here we have some American helicopter units, and we have American units concentrated here. We got a few extra separate units here. One here. What is this? Artillery unit, and some units left up here towards the front. Now what I want to do is, I think I want to activate this West German unit here for formation. Here I want to move it up and probably want to do a defensive line roughly here. But I also want to bring this this is a EW unit. I want to bring EW to bear here. So figure out how to get the EW into the fight.